Hi, everybody. My name is AnneCTotero, and I am the podcaster connected to Skull Meat Love Podcast. I'm also an author of Things to Consider by AnneCTotero. And in my day job, I am a therapist and AMFT approved supervisor. This is a very unique Skull Meat Love Podcast episode. It is a very unique experience because it is my first time completely sharing one of my biggest personal tragedies, traumas, including medical conditions. So there's a couple things that I note before going into this. You'll see on the bottom that all my streams are educational only. They don't replace medical treatment. You need to turn to your own care team to talk about this. This specific experience with what we call the 600-pound therapist, which was me. I want you to know very clearly that this is not everybody's journey. This is not reflective of your journey. This is one narrative, one experience. And a big part of mindful media is I please ask you to seek out from your own individuals in your life that you trust, whether that be loved ones or medical professionals. It's important that you lean on them and bring these conversations back to them. This is not the end of a conversation, it's the start. And the reality is, there is a lot of ableism, there is a lot of fat phobia that is still going around in the world, and there's a lot of shame and guilt around our bodies, food, and health. And I am hoping that maybe seeing a real life example of 600-pound life, not only to break myths or to change your mind in any capacity, but just inform you that this has been a journey, and I'm hoping that it will get to who it's supposed to get to and that we can learn from it. Now, you'll see here that food, mental health, body image, all of those topics are very difficult, and some people may not be ready for them. I do say that I really focus on a brave space, which means I really have people take care of themselves. But this is my ultimate trigger warning that there are things um, related to mental health. There's things related to body and body image. There's things related to health and food. There is things even connected to suicide and suicide risk. So I need you to know that if these are topics that if you, what I say, speaking from a scar, not a wound, if you're in the wound state, obviously you are an adult. I just recommend it may not be the best time and you can always come back to this. And I really appreciate all of you being here. So here we go. And this is very important as I go through this that I am my own editor. I don't have any fancy technology. I don't have anybody editing this but me. So I just ask for your grace in telling my story in the best and most authentic way possible. It is important to know that I have not um I've pre-recorded this in the sense that I am pre-recording it to put it online and save it, but I have not pre-recorded it. At this point, I don't have any plans to edit it as I start this, and I haven't even written anything. Sometimes I'll put things up on the screen that give me prompts or things to remember to talk about. As you can see probably by my affect that this is very unplanned in the sense of I just knew I wanted to talk about it, but I don't know what's going to come out today. I don't know what emotions, what words are going to come out. The only thing that you will see is periodically that I will pause it in order to maybe gather my thoughts. And that's just the way my frontal lobe works. But I will let you know either in the comments or by the end if I have edited this in any capacity. The most important thing is I appreciate you being here. And this is truly my most authentic self. Now, some people would say, why are you choosing to share this now? Like, what is the reason you're choosing to, whether it's sharing about body image, health, or becoming 600 pounds? It's extremely important to know. So 598, I'm sure I was above that because I wasn't weighing myself. I probably was above 600 pounds, but by the time I weighed myself at a doctor's office, I was 598 pounds. So when we say the real life experience of a 600-pound life, this is one of them. And it's not glorified by any TV network. I'm not sponsored. I'm not getting anything from this in the sense of just hopefully being vulnerable. And again, I hope it gets to the audience and I hope speaking from a scar gets to who it's supposed to today. So why I'm doing it, what are the reasons I'm doing this, is I know that there is somebody out there that is sitting in their house waiting to die. I know that there is someone that's obese, overweight. They don't need to be 600 pounds, but because of the culture that we live in, their will to live, how they see themselves, their body image, it becomes very difficult in a daily battle. And if you have not gone through it, which I would very highly doubt that you have not, yet if you have not gone through it, even not the extent that I have or others have, you have felt what culture has put in our minds about our bodies, put in minds about that weight and body image and the food we eat, all of those things somehow have become connected to our value in some way. And it is so difficult to separate that. And it becomes a very difficult process for a lot of people. Now, there are a couple things when I say not only just why am I doing this, I hope it reaches those individuals, or if you are a loved one that is watching someone, whether it is they are eating themselves to death, whether they are isolating themselves to death, whether they are not saying that they are, I'm actively suicidal right now, right? They're not saying those words. Yet they are complacent or very openly could be gaslit by the medical system, not getting help. They could be asking for help and not getting it, which was a part of my story, is a part of my story. So we're going to break this up into a couple parts because there's so much data. The first part is going to be really about who I was before I was 600 pounds. I think there are a lot of myths and misconceptions about why somebody, the reasons that somebody becomes 600 pounds. And you're going to see that half of that really has to do with a system. Half of that really has to do with the things that impacted me outside of myself, the external impacts. And then I'm going to tell you more about the internal impacts, including whether that's mental health or other things. And it's not to place blame or a finger point or to say any other thing other than the facts as much as I can, included in my experience. Now, it is important. I'm speaking as AnneCTotero, not AnneCTotero, even though it says AnneCTotero LMFT. It's because it's a 600-pound therapist. But what's important to know is this is as raw as I get. This is me. This is going to be AnneCTotero sharing her story. That just happens to be a therapist and an AMFT approved supervisor. So as we go along, thank you for being along for the journey because we're going to talk about who I was before. And then the second part is going to be when I was 600 pounds, the things that I went through, the things that I experienced. That is the one that I perceive potentially may have a lot of emotion attached to it very openly. And even though it's from a scar, because there's grief attached to this and there's so much that has glommed onto it in the process, it's essential to know that this is a difficult thing to talk about. And then where I am now, what I hope to educate on, where we go from here, but the biggest thing I'm hoping is to provide some insight without any TVs or drama and without any secondary gain. If anything, I make a joke that because I have very much a avoidant attachment style in the sense of I've healed a lot from it and evolved, but I'm somebody where I choose to minimize and not maximize. I choose to um self-regulate and put things off over here before I deal with them. So this is actually very uncomfortable for me, even if social media is like, yeah, this is the new norm. People are sharing their stories. For someone like me and anyone who knows nonverbals, you can tell I'm physically experiencing this right now. Okay. So here we go. 600-pound therapist. You had your introduction. Here's part one, who I was before this. So the first thing people may assume being a 600-pound person is that potentially education. There is definitely a preconceived notion in some capacity that individuals that have weight issues, that they lack intelligence. It's one of the things when they research it, when they talk about body image, health, food, etc., that there's normally intelligence that's related to it. They will sit there and assume that I'm not educated. And the truth is the complete opposite. My parents put us through a top education. They work their way up. My parents, they grew up with nothing. They were first generation. They grew up with nothing and then they made a life for themselves, and the rest of my family did. They worked extremely hard. They worked their way up. Um, so there was very much their pull yourself up by your bootstraps energy, right? Which is, if anybody knows parents with baby boomers, it's not a bad thing. It's just a part of the culture. They had to survive it because they came post wars. Nothing to blame on, nothing to point fingers. It's a fact that it was something that I experienced, that it was very much a different culture. And it was around a time when the world was rapidly changing, not only becoming a lot more open, a lot more expressive, a lot more inclusive, yet there was still a lot of culture that was very, very different. So that was kind of the first part, was educated. My parents did that. Then I got scholarships and my parents helped me go through a part. They didn't pay for all of it, yet I am very thankful. The point is that they worked their way up and helped me get to a university. I went to Northern Michigan University. I got a psychology degree. Um, and even from there, I'm moving past it, but then I got a master's in marriage and family almost right after that. So when people talk about education, intelligence, I can tell you that being 600 pounds doesn't have anything to do with education, in the sense of that if somebody is intelligent or not. If they have body image issues, it's about IQ, or they don't realize that. So a lot of people that give unsolicited advice, they think that we don't know, that we don't know the facts, that we're not facing the facts. Sometimes it's not if you know something, it's if you're ready to face that thing. Now, it's also important to know growing up that I always had weight issues, hormonal issues, medical issues. I even had I had puberty very, very, very young. I hit puberty very young. So I developed very young, which created a whole nother subset of things. And that contagioned into some other things. But it's very important to know that hormonal changes starting extremely young impacts things. And when I say young, like fourth or fifth grade, this was not something that happened when I was 13 or 14. I was developed way before everybody else in my school at the time. So that was something that's important to know. Um, the other thing that's important to know is that I was not treated like medically for anything before the age of 18, and what that means, even mental health, which I'll explain a little bit later. I wasn't treated for anything like that. So even sometimes when individuals have the misconception that somebody has kind of been in the system for a long time, even before 18, I was definitely somebody where I was either overweight or obese at a young age. I developed very early and I was always chubby or bigger. That was always something that was there. Yet the third thing I want to talk about is then everybody seems to, a lot of individuals, excuse me, a lot of individuals will assume not only about intelligence or even socioeconomic status. My parents were middle class. They later were upper middle class. So it's something where they think it's related to that, or access to medical care. I had access to medical care. The another assumption is that lazy or movement, but it's very important, part of my internalized ableism and the journey that I went through, what was very difficult was I was a scholar athlete. So I played sports since I was young. I was extremely active. When I say I was home just enough, had a great time with my family, had a good relationship with my family, and I went to play sports. I loved sports. It was a part of me. I played traveling soccer. I was on A-level leagues of soccer for traveling soccer leagues. I started out even with rec leagues before that. I love softball. I love soccer. I was even on softball teams, which I later was an all-county softball player when I got to high school. So I was a very talented athlete. I played volleyball. I played on traveling volleyball leagues. I was even an all-county golfer. So I was very much a athlete. And scholar means that I got really good grades. So I even got a scholarship for my grades to go to the university I went to. So it's not only just about education, but movement. People think that individuals with weight issues that oftentimes they're not athletes or don't move. And that is a huge part of the grief for me was and the internalized ableism is that I should be able to do something like this. Yet even working out multiple times, even doing those things, I still was overweight. I still was obese at one point, even in my senior year. And that was playing sports all the time. And again, huge part of my identity, my development, my socialization, and honestly, something I'm extremely proud of. I think it taught me a lot of persistence. Yet there is something else that it taught me was performance and perfectionism, which is a huge part of this story too, which we're going to go into a little bit later. But I wanted to give you kind of a little bit of a background that some of these myths that come to about how people get to 600 pounds is also that maybe I didn't have support. And I need you to know that that is also not true. And that's not to give anybody grace or that everybody was perfect all the time or everybody was this or said the right thing all the time. Goodness, that's not fair. But what I do know is I had people there. That is a privilege. I had two parents that even are married and alive now. That is a privilege. I had two older siblings and that was my brother and sister. Doesn't matter, normal sibling stuff, but when I tell you, know that I'm loved, that is fact. It doesn't matter if small things came up. I was close to both of them. Not everybody can say that. I had best friends. I had people not only in sports, but in school. I was very well surrounded by that. And then I had a really good education system. I had good mentors. I had great coaches. So sometimes I just need people to know that there could be all these great things going on, yet there are things underneath also going on. And that's what was happening with me was underneath. There was a lot going on, not just hormonally, but with mental health that later again I'm going to explain a little bit that I began to understand a little bit more. Yet between 0 and 18, there were experience and things that I had that impacted me. And it wasn't even that my parents I can't even report that, my parents were calling me fat or anybody. The only thing I remember is, nothing against my sister because we have a great relationship, but because you're a kid, I think she called me fat once when I was a kid or in middle school. And obviously even admitted minutes later that that was about her. So that's the one time I remember. And now the next kind of myth people think is that I was super bullied, right? Because I was a plus size young kid. I was not. I was a part of the popular kids. I was a part of the group. I was socially inclusive. I was in theater and sports and I was connected to people. Normal stuff in high school where not everybody likes you, but there's nothing I can point out that I was targeted, if that makes sense. There was absolutely nothing that was representative of that. There was I can't go back and say that there was some extreme bullying from somebody that I could. What I do know is when things changed. So I wanna tell you about that next. When I look back and I look at this journey and I look medically what's going on medically, whether people see it as a disease, medical, impact of medical, or choice, no matter what you're coming in here to learn. This next part is important because this is what I perceive in my evolution, self evolution, my healing of this process. This is what I connect it to. When I was 18 years old and I was a softball player, I was even getting potentially recruited for teams like for college and stuff like that. So I was even in the newspaper before the season even started. Those of us that it was our senior year and we were really good athletes. That's what's interesting. So on my birthday, happy birthday to me when I turned 18, we were practicing. We were practicing for softball and I took a swing and I twisted my knee, something horrendous. I just remember I still to this day snap, crackle, popped it. Okay. And I remember that when that happened, I wish I could explain the dread that came through because my identity, who I was, movement was such and sports were such a protective factor for me. Organized sports was. and group sports and social sports. Those were things that really brought me life. So when that happened, it was kind of like, okay, this is what I have to deal with. And I remember at the time I didn't even cry. I just kind of told the person I was playing with, Sarah, I was like, I think you need to go get the coach. I think something happened. So I again minimize her even then. So I went and I got it checked out. And I remember he was the top knee surgeon in Southeast Wisconsin, top of the top. Yet here's the difficult thing, okay? I had patellar displacement and an MCL and PCL tear. Mostly MCL was the worst of it, and a patellar displacement, which means my kneecap was off to the right. So at that time, I do think this was the start of it is I probably should have got surgery. Very openly. I probably should have got surgery at that time, not just to, whatever the reason may be. But looking back in time, if I could sit here, I understand that this individual, and I'm not going to sit here and blame him or put out his name or do anything. He did the best he could with what he had. Yet what I know is that because I was an athlete, because of everything else, they just put me in PT. I was almost going to be going off to college. There was all these different things. They thought it would make bigger issues than not. So what they did, what do you think he did? He basically said, let's go into PT and we're not going to give you surgery. I do think, I don't want to call it the kiss of death. That's a little dangerous. That's not a little dramatic. I think that that was truly what impacted this journey in the beginning. I think that there's all those other things which we'll talk about, get to, go deeper into, yet that was the first physical medical thing that impacted me. Now, please keep in mind, I have a couple things, not just medically, which I found out now, that we have arthritis that runs in my family. We have osteoarthritis that runs in my family. We, have osteoporosis that runs in the family, but arthritis is huge on both sides of my family. I can even remember certain family members, like they would clamp their hands. I mean, like it's pretty severe to that point. Yet, that was something that had happened. So in my head, of course, I didn't know any of that at the time. Of course, that I just trust medical professionals. And because I was 18, my parents obviously gave me choices. Yet, even if it was their insurance, they said, ultimately, you can do what you want. But the specialist, really recommended do PT, keep it as less invasive. As soon as you start with surgery or open it up, it means you're open for other knee surgeries in the future because it could deteriorate bones, et cetera. And this was just at the time where for young people, that wasn't really a first way to go. If there was another option, they would do it. Okay. So that was the start of it. And I do believe that then I went to college. So now I'm like laid up. I'm an athlete. Now I can't work out. Now I can't do things. That's the start of it, not moving. Yet I was still eating like an athlete. And anybody that's an athlete, you understand when you eat like an athlete, it means like you got to eat the way you move. And that's a difficult thing to switch because, again, I was an athlete since I was in single digits. So for me, I was still eating like I was an athlete. Like I moved every day, like I moved every minute, and I wasn't. And that was also a problem. And that's a problem in the sense of, yes, people would say choice, yet it's so embedded in my brain that at that time I didn't understand it. Okay. I didn't understand that what I was doing or what was happening. There's more education on it now. Then you fast forward to college. The freshman 15 was like Anne's freshman 75. Now that's because not moving, my pain, I couldn't hike the way other people did. I knew that there was an issue, but I thought it was a me thing or I was being a big baby, so I didn't get my knee fixed. And, then I started doing PT stuff and add all of that together. Okay. When I left high school, I just found this. When I left high school, I was around 200 to 25. And I say I was definitely overweight, of course, yet I was very mobile, minus my knee. I was very mobile. I was very active. I was very athletic. So even though people saw me as 225, if you probably guessed, you would assume that I was 150. I was solid muscle. I was solid muscle. I had a lot of muscle in me, not just fat. And then obviously curves and everything else add that. So even though I was 225, I always looked almost 100 pounds less than I was. Even when people kind of say like, are they known that I lost weight or before I did, they always guessed me 100 pounds less than I was because I have a lot of muscle. So with that part of the story, then I gained weight. And this, we haven't talked about it yet. This is where mental health and choice come in. And I say both because it's extremely important if you're somebody that's struggling or have someone that's struggling with this. There is a point where you have to believe that there is a part of choice. You do have to understand that's the part of accountability. And it's a difficult part, yet it's extremely important to do that. And that's not to shame yourself or to guilt yourself, but to face the reality. And let's go into then college years. So now I'm probably almost 300 pounds. Okay. And again, socially, I'm doing well. Academically, I'm doing well. Everything else is going well. I have a boyfriend of a long time. It was a boyfriend I was with since high school who was very supportive. If anything, like the girls were a little bit bigger. So there was that part of it. So I always had relationships. I had a healthy sexual drive. I had what I say being desired, I think not just as a friend, but an intimate partner. So there wasn't bullying or anything big. The thing is that I kind of joke with people that almost my confidence and my self-worth, and I'm very authentic, self-confident. I've always been like, yeah, you want to get my face, you better give it a go. You know what I mean? So I think kind of joke sometimes that my confidence and self-esteem was sometimes a protective factor, but a risk factor because if anybody said anything about any of my health, anybody said anything, I would just give a middle finger and say, it's not about you. It has nothing to do with you. And because I was intelligent, people would just kind of walk on by and be like, oh, she'll get it figured out. Right. Which is most of the time, sometimes what happens. So as I go to college, I get in my second year super, super, super addicted to fast food. When I tell you I got a second job, I did all these different things. I was in research. I was really involved at the university. I was doing really well. Yet I got really addicted to fast food. And whether people like that or not, yes, it's connected to choice. And it's important to know that there's another part of this that fast food is very accessible. Fast food is something that became a point of comfort. I didn't grow up with fast food. I think we went to Taco Bell or to get like pancakes at McDonald's once in a blue moon, but we ate at home. And my parents really focused on like balanced meals, not like hyper focusing on it and saying like you have to be fit and thin and you have to be this, but they were conscientious because I have a family history of weight issues, of diabetes, of hormonal issues, of cancer. um, my mother being a medical provider, my dad owning a business, they were both very successful people. They were conscientious and aware because of their own journeys and the things they had been through. So they were conscientious yet not obsessive. So there's that. And as you go, and then I got addicted to fast food when I got into my sophomore year. And when that happened, I it's when I say almost like a blur, and that addiction happened way into my 20s. It was almost like I was not full unless I was eating fast food. I was not satiated unless I was eating fast food. It was almost like the crazy even now, the sensory, which we're gonna get to mental health in a second, it was less about emotion for me. It was not about like, I feel lonely or I feel this or I feel sad or I feel stressed or I feel this. It was more like sensory. It was sensory seeking behavior. It was soothing and I connected it to that. Also food because I'm Italian and I grew up in a tavern and everything else. I think it really was related to relationships and love and connection. So I didn't have like a negative connotation in that capacity with it. That was a positive thing. It was sensory and soothing and nice, and the other part was community. So it was something that I really aligned with, that part of emotion, of love and appreciation and connection was important to me. So as I moved into that addiction, it started turning into the way you would think it would. I started going by myself instead of with friends. I started going in my car. I started getting 2 meals instead of 1. I started supersizing them or making them large, all of them, and finishing it myself. And when I say finishing it myself, it was definitely meals for 2 or 3 people. Now, those at that point, when we say there are stuff that is connected in untreated mental health conditions and still choices. The reality is I did have access to food. I was lucky enough. I had a privilege that I did have access to healthier food, whether financially or otherwise. And if I needed help from my parents financially, they would have given it. I was very independent. I joke I even bought my first car. My parents taught us financial independence and not nepo babies in any capacity. They very much taught us about hard work. So that became a thing. And then 300 turned to 375 and 375 turned to 4. I would say before I went into my master's program, I probably was around 380 before I went into my master's program at that point. Yet I was just normalizing like eating by myself and eating a lot, throwing in, 2 frozen pizzas. I remember I would throw in 2 frozen pizzas, make sure that they were hot. Then because I could eat them faster, quicker, I would throw them in the freezer so that I could eat them. And it was the other thing was is I was only eating like once a day, maybe twice. So that was another thing. I was basically destroying my metabolism at that point, destroying it, right? Like eating high amounts in that case, like once, maybe twice a day. So then because I would eat late or I'd go alone or I'd do this, then I wouldn't eat in the morning. And you could see how this precipitates. This is routine and pattern that you can have control over. Again, I'm going to leave that for the end about what I learned from this. Yet I need just here's the preventative phase of the things you need to start noticing if you're eating alone, if you're eating a lot of fast food, if you're addicted to one thing, if you're drinking one thing. If you are noticing that you somehow are connecting that to comfort, whether it's stimulation comfort, whether it's cognitive comfort or emotional comfort, you have to come to a conclusion that there's that. Okay. Now, then we go into my master's program. Okay. So I get my master's in marriage and family therapy. I move back to Madison, Wisconsin. I don't know a soul. I don't know anybody. I move in with people, etc. I'm about 380 pounds at that point. Still having social, still having romantic connections. I had a boyfriend leaving college, different boyfriend leaving college. And it was a good relationship, didn't fit because we were far apart, yet these were good people. My first 2 long-term boyfriends were actually very good people. So even looking back and thinking about grief or trauma or all those other things, they were very good people. I'm fortunate to say that, and they're good people now. Um, then we moved down to Madison. I'm alone, same thing. You could see how the vicious cycle continues. Yet something else happened. Something else happens. Okay, now let's go into that. We got to break this into 3 parts a little bit. I'm breaking parts into parts into parts into parts, but it's a little complicated and trying to compile this huge story into this one thing. So when I get to Madison, there's a couple things that happen. One, my schedule is just shot. Like it is a mess because I'm going to my master's full time. I am working full time. I actually had a part-time job on top of that. And then my second year it turns into internship. So it was very, very busy, high expectations, something I put on myself. Okay. Me. I did that. My parents even said, "Hey, if you wanna go get your master's program, we're not paying for it. Not an entitled thing. This is like now we're going into, like, privilege and entitlement stuff. We helped you with your undergrad. We're not helping with this." Totally fair, by the way. Absolutely. I financially took it on, still paying off the loans, by the way. Oh my god. That's a whole nother ballgame. That's a whole nother podcast. Yet that's what happened. So my schedule, routine, everything. So you could see I would almost go, like, so much time without food, and then I would binge and then not have time to eat till the next day. And that was I would probably eat once a day, but the amount of calories was probably 5 to 10,000. There's absolutely no way that I wasn't. And that was what my new norm would be. And that's when the addiction continued with food and fast food, things that were highly accessible because I didn't have time. We'll teach you in the end. Having time to like mitigate, I would say, well, I'll just go get something fast. And I did. And I can't even tell you if I could go back and just put how I'd be able to pay off my loans if I thought of how much I paid on fast food. Okay. So there was that. 2 is the mental health part of it, the lack of awareness to my nervous system. I'm gonna teach you that later on and talk about that, but there was just no connection to my nervous system. My body to my brain was not connected whatsoever. And when I say it was connected in the sense of, like, I could be present in the moment. I always joke I'm actually at the best with my clients because I'm the most present and centered and everything else. It did not affect patient care. And as I was learning, I just realized when I was outside of that time, I was so disconnected, almost numb. And it became very pervasive. It became very apparent. And I started meeting new people, new experiences, their experiences with food, body, etc. and spiritually getting into a lot of stuff. So just investigating my own belief system, self-evolution, etc. Now, this third thing is the other big thing that really happened was I had a teacher. I had a professor that was in my master's program that came to me, not gonna out them here. I came to my professor came forward and said, "Ian, can I ask you something like one-on-one?" I said, "Sure." And she said, "I really think that you have ADHD." Now, before everybody rolls their eyes and said everybody has ADHD, I want you to know I was not somebody seeking that out. I was not somebody that wanted it. I was not somebody that poeticized or romanticized it. I was someone where I was saying, "What are you talking about?" Like, what exactly are you talking about with that, you know? Um, I actually thought it was intrusive. I was upset with her. I set a boundary and said, "I don't feel like that's appropriate." And she goes, "Whether you think it's appropriate or not, I think you should look into it because I think it's affecting your daily living. It's affecting how you think, and I think you can live a better life." Now, I was really mad at her at the time, yet what I do know is I think that that helped, and I think that that was I don't know, people could have their different views on necessary, but I do think it helped. So then I got an assessment. Now, instead of, again, when I talk about mental health, it's extremely important that you know mindful media. I'm going to pin this again. Okay. I'm going to pin this again at the bottom. Everything with mental health diagnoses, that does not mean your experience. Everybody with, that was 600 pounds doesn't have ADHD. Everybody with 600 pounds doesn't have all these experiences. Everybody with 600 pounds doesn't have this. We can't fit into a box that way. So it's as I'm discussing this, I do just want to remind you that mindful media is about this is one person's story, one only, not yours, not your experience. You need to take this back to people. You need to take it back to your care team and people that you love. There's things you're curious about. But what I don't like is people romanticizing mental health and saying it's the only reason something happened. Keep in mind, I had an injury, I had hormonal issues. We're going to find out about more medical conditions as we move forward. I had a lot of medical complexity, which I didn't know about. And to be honest, probably being an athlete was the best thing that happened to me. And when I started eating poorly and my body started changing and my pain got worse, that is when things really went downhill because you're okay normally until the age 25 until your body catches up. And by the way, it will catch up. It's not the fear factor, it's a fact. If you eat that way or don't move, your body will catch up. Stress will increase, cortisol will increase. Those things are real. Okay. So then I went to go get an assessment because I thought on it and I said, maybe she had some validity to it. My personality, even at 21 or 22, was basic. I think I was 21 at 20 or 21 at the time. And I said, okay, I'll give it a go. So then I went to go get assessed. They gave the even the ones to my parents. It wasn't the Vanderbilt at the time. I forgot what other one it was. But anyways, it was basically a parent report and things like that. And then it was my report, a self-report, very extensive process. And it was a specialist in ADHD. And then I went to a psychiatrist because they wanted both like a second opinion. It was more extensive. Now they actually have evals. It was a little more extensive at the time, which honestly I appreciate looking back because that type of extensiveness really, I got two eyes on it to say, what's your opinion? And that was helpful to me because that internalized ableism of shame and guilt, and I should be able to do this, it became a medical reality. So they had said, "You absolutely have ADHD." I still remember her looking at my parents and looking at mine, talking about my history. I was in sports and I was in all these different things. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Okay. But overstimulation, I still remember to this day that even getting touched on the back in sports, like if people pat you on the back, I used to freak out. Like when I tell you, like sensory freak out, touch certain glasses, freak out. There's just certain sensations. Even now, look at me, look at me, look at me. I don't like it. I don't like it. You can ask my partner downstairs. I snap about sensory stuff all the time. I'm like, I can't do it. Um, so that is something, again, not to make an excuse, but it's a reason. Overstimulation is a thing because dopamine and basal ganglia and everything else in your neuroscience and your frontal lobe, it's overstimulated. It lights up like a Christmas tree. Now, I had sports to mitigate that for a really long time and structure. And then when I didn't have that, even though normally then it turned to things like work. I turned into a workaholic where my perfectionism got a whole little new home. Perfectionism had a home in sports. Now it had a home in work. We love that. And when you're a young person that wants to work your soul away, of course, everybody enjoys that. You're a much cheaper version of those things. So then that happened. So Now I'm diagnosed with ADHD. She's like, "I still wanna consider OCD," and then I just stopped. I think I switched insurance because I switched jobs, so then I didn't keep seeing her, but ultimately, they did put me on stimulants, they did put me on these other things, and then I went to a different therapist altogether, and that's when she was like, "Yeah, I think you have ADHD and OCD." So in my early 20s, by that point, I very much and OCD is a part of this too. Um, it's the perfectionism, it's the repetitive obsessive thoughts, it is ADHD very much was connected to the sensory part of it because I actually, guys, I'm not even shitting you, okay? I sought out eating disorder specialists, 3, because I was gaining weight. At that point, I was like in my 400 early 400s and I'm like, "Okay, but I'm still like, successful and I'm still have friends and I have all these different things." So I don't know why no one my family was kind of like, "Ann, are you good?" Um Yet that's what happened. So then I got diagnosed and this stuff started like snowballing, snowballing, snowballing. And then I was like, well, there has to be like not just ADHD or some other thing, but I have a hormonal condition. So I was not diagnosed with PCOS, but I somehow had irregular bleeding and hormonal issues way, way, way back at 18. They threw me on birth control. Okay. It was a progesterone only. Yes, that's important. Progesterone only at 18. So I was on that for bleeding issues and everything else. Then I got diagnosed with ADHD and OCD. So now it's turning into like what doesn't feel good, but polypharmacy and polymedical. It's turning into this very complex thing, which on top of that, you know, I had a second injury. So I'm already 400 plus pounds. I had a second injury in 2013. I had a second injury. And when that happened, there's just these times in my mind, these all impact it, but there's times in my mind where things really shift. Again, internalized ableism, walking, but honestly, it's just functional movement, which is a huge part of health. Um, which again, we're going to talk about more. That was the next part of it. So then that happened as I had another injury as with, a new partner at the time. I have long relationships, but a different partner. He was also a therapist. He was very health conscious, very healthy, very well aware of, like, his body, his health, etcetera. And that very much so when I had that second injury, there were a couple things that happened, and these stick in my mind. This is a start of really deeply starting to understand how the medical field impacts health. Okay. We're not at I'm 600 pounds yet. We're at the before still. So let's keep going. You've been very patient. This is a very long series, and I thank you for being here. I do want to just make a reminder that if you're not following on me on AnneCTotero, like please follow me on these platforms that are down here. Every single platform you can find me, everything from TikTok to Instagram, YouTube, otherwise. And I would love to get your support there. So let's go into the huge second phase. I get in this injury. I go to a doctor, which takes months to get into, and she is the top specialist at UW-Madison. She's actually connected to UW-Madison. I had at the time, excuse me, an insurance that connected to UW-Madison. This is my first time getting into UW-Madison care. So then I had went into it, and that's not to call UW-Madison. I actually work for UW Health right now, so I just need you to know that this does not reflect any of them. Don't seek out any information. Don't get mad at UW-Madison or UW Health. I think that they are a part, just like any medical system or healthcare delivery system. We're a part of this bigger system, and it was about how people are trained and how we can educate and not obsessing over what was. I think that's extremely important. You can look at the reality of what was, you can look at the reality of things that were happened, but finger pointing doesn't help people, okay? Holding people accountable and feedback does, which I will share. You'll see I learn as we go, okay? Learn as we go, grow as we go. Um and glow as we grow. So now I go to the specialist. I see a PT guy before because you have to go in. He does like a full functional assessment. And he's like, huh, are you like bow legged? Are you knock kneed? Are you this or that? And I was like, no idea. I said, I have patellar displacement. Keep in mind, my knee has never been fixed. It's never been better. I don't think I was ever free of pain since that time, since I was 18. So now it's 2013, right? I mean, I'm 24, 25, something like that. So we get to this meeting and she comes in, she doesn't talk to me for longer than a couple seconds. She looks at the thing in front of her. She talks to the guy for a second and then she looks at me and without even like assessing my knee, okay, she looks at me and she says, you need to be below 200 pounds for me even to do this assessment. And I said, okay. And she said, "I just can't have a conversation. It's too much of a liability. It's too much of a liability to you and me because you could get re-injured and then we're going to have to keep doing surgery. And the more surgery that you do, the more dangerous that it gets. It's not just knee replacements, but it increases health conditions, which is kind of what the other doctor said to me. Like if we do this once, it turns into a bigger issue later on. So I don't know what was going on in like the knee specialist industry or what. Um, Yet I do understand that sometimes if people weigh a lot, it is difficult to do knee surgery, going through that right now and waiting for it, even at 350 now. So now she tells me it's just too much. And she literally doesn't let me respond, doesn't let me ask questions, nothing. She leaves the room. And the PT guy goes like this. I'm sorry. Let me consult with her and I'll be right back. So that is, I wish I was being dramatic about it. That is, so I'm in shock. I'm in shell shock. Um, That this is what's happening, and whether those are facts or not, it's how you deliver something, and if she knew anything about my body, my case, when you are 300, almost 400 pounds, the likelihood of you being under 200 pounds is not likely. Your bones have changed. Now I know that. Your bones have changed. They're obviously compensating. They do get bigger, whether people like it or not, your bones get bigger. So it has to compensate. Your body has to make up for that massive amount of weight. And that is what happened. So even the likelihood now I know I have very informed doctors, very, I would say, inclusive doctors that have told me that, like, that's just most likely not gonna happen. I don't have a goal to be under 200 pounds. I have a goal to be at a weight that someone's gonna give me knee surgery, which at this point is 240 to 250. That's what I'm aiming for, another 100 pounds. But I could tell you, I have no interest in being under 200 or being with the stereotypical, concept of a 5'8" person, which I am. But that destroyed me. And I am someone confident, self-confident, intelligent, self-regulated. I had all those things. I was doing the work alongside people. I was going to the therapist. I was figuring it out. I was even a therapist myself. By the way, I was a therapist myself by the time I was 22. So I'm recognizing these things and I said, wow, okay. So then he comes back and he goes, yeah, sorry, like you have to be on this. I said, okay, do you have a referral? Do you have a next step that I could make? Do you have this? You got to go to your primary care physician. Okay. Let's throw this on a primary care physician, not a specialist. A 400-pound person with a knee problem doesn't seem like a PCP problem, but okay, let's throw it back on them when they see 800 to 1,000 people. Neat job, guys. When you're supposed to be the specialty care clinic, noted. So that was the first thing. And then as I drive home that day, I shit you not, I'm driving home, and what do you think happens? I get pulled over on the corner. I still remember in the corner of East Wash. And I got West Wash, excuse me, not on purpose. West Wash. I got in Madison and I got pulled over. They were just happened to have a speed trap there that day. And you know what the speed trap was? Seat belts. Well, funny for them, I couldn't fit in my seatbelt. I couldn't put my seatbelt on at that point. I was so fat, I couldn't put my seatbelt on. So I told her that. And I said, "It's not that I don't have it on because I don't want to, it's because I can't." And the pathetic, like, when I say it was like this pathetic, like, sympathy look, like, she's like, "Sorry, I'm really and then she was like, "No, like, I really am sorry." She's like, "It is the law and I have to, like, write you a ticket." And I said, "Okay." So I went home with this, whatever, 60 or $80 ticket because I was too fat to put on my seatbelt. And there it was. Now this starts the next journey, the medical journey, medical health related to weight. And let me tell you guys, I was not prepared for this. Just I just want to say I was not prepared for this next part. In that sense of nobody can prepare you because nobody knows a lot of times when you're over a certain amount of weight, a lot of people don't know what to do with you. you guys. They don't know what to do. The medical field has no idea what to do. It's not only just they're trained in this and that. The internal system of the medical system is fat phobic as all hell. I don't care what anybody says. And if anybody says that they're helping you because of this and that, like the people that are giving you Ozempic to the soccer moms that haven't healed their trauma or their PTSD, or not their trauma, PTSD, or their eating behavior or anything else, but they throw Ozempic because they want to lose 20 pounds. That's a part of the problem. That is still fat phobic, because those medications were utilized for people which will find like me with medical insulin resistance, with pre-diabetes, not for people to somehow heal their internalized fat phobia that their body and their weight has to do with their value. And sorry, I'm getting a little feisty. I told you I'm not editing this. This is as raw as it gets. So that is the stuff that don't and someone says, like, let people get, quote unquote, let them get skinny however they want. I've heard that all over the social media. What is any business with you? You can't like me this, you can't like me that. But the problem is some of the people taking this, you aren't fat. A lot of the people taking this, you don't have medical conditions. You're taking it because society told you that you have value if you look a certain way. And I'm not saying don't be healthy, but there are ways that, like, there are people that have fought for 20 years, not only to get these things on insurance panels, including myself, fought to get these things, and to, hear that someone wants to lose 5 pounds, they take Ozempic. Like, I'm sorry. That's difficult. I can't tell people what to do. You're all adults. I just think that that's difficult. That's difficult to process. So anyways, let's not go into that. Let's go into the next phase of it. So now that really affected me. And this starts me down. I was never like a yo-yo dieter. Okay. I was never someone that I was up and down and up and down. But it's almost like the medical system turned it into that. Have you tried Weight Watchers? Then I tried Weight Watchers and I lost. I lost 100 pounds. I think at that point, I lost some by myself. I think I was again around 375 or 350. I can't remember. So I lost some by myself and then I couldn't. So then I lost another chunk. I lost like 100 pounds on Weight Watchers the first time. And then when this weird thing happened, that you realize that the programs fail, because ultimately, and they may have changed now, nothing against Weight Watchers. Don't come after me, Weight Watchers. I know nothing about Weight Watchers now. This is from, 15 years ago. Okay. So 10, 15 years ago. So then I got on it, and what ended up happening is the program at the time, they really validated success, but there was so much shame and guilt, and like, "What do you think happened? If you, like, gained some weight back, I went on vacation? Was that emotional eating?" Jesus. Okay, and it was a whole bunch of people that, like, weren't medical professionals trying to be medical professionals, and honestly, it gave me a little bit of a headache. So even though I lost a little bit, okay, that happened. I gained it back because this program ultimately at the time, they really supported, like, the point system. You could have this, you could have that, but it still didn't stop binging because, certain things were 0 points. You could sit there and binge on food. Didn't help with binging, didn't help with sensory issues, didn't help with any of that. The other thing it didn't help with is when you got to a certain point, there were only so many points you could use in a day. But if you freaking ate like an avocado and cheese, and even if it was healthy, wholesome eating, some of those things were, whether high in protein, fat, etc., they were high in points. So even if sometimes you ate really well, it was almost like it encouraged eating like fat free or low calorie, which for me, I'd rather eat wholesome and less, which I do now. And I'm still losing weight, by the way. Wholesome and well and clean. But it's almost like you were like, "Oh, I can get so many points for this." It turned into like a game system. So then I gained the weight back. Okay. It's almost like it's set, in my opinion, set you up for failure in some capacity. Okay. So then let's fast forward even beyond that. I gained the weight back. And I remember at the time that there was the medical weight loss program. It was through one of the I'll just say it, Meritor. It was through Meritor here. I thought the guy was pretty cool. I thought their team was really good. Yet it is like a low calorie deficit. So basically you eat a whole bunch of like small little packet things with a whole bunch of water, and it's almost like 5 to 800 calories a day, and you medically are monitored. They make you take a med like for your body. They make you do everything. Basically the idea is they're underfeeding you in order, and that's just not Meritor. There were lots of programs, low calorie programs. Okay. This is not a new thing. So it's medical like weight loss program. And then what they did is then after that, I lost 80 pounds again. So I'm on record and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm almost there. I would think I was at, 249, whatever. So now I'm like around that same weight. And I'm like, maybe I could just, see if I could get my knee done then. Right. And literally, I just had her in the back of my head. You're under 200 or you can't do it. You're under 200 and you can't do it. To be honest, I just remember going on vacation and gaining the weight back. I do not remember what happened. It's not because I black it out or anything. I just honestly don't know. I All I remember is I went on vacation, I ate a burger, okay, and, like, sensory-wise, all of that stuff went up, and very openly, probably the addiction. The addiction. That's what it is. You're seeing an epiphany. My addiction kicked back in. My addiction to the fast food. It wasn't even a fast food place, it was just a burger joint. Um, but that was enough. That salt and that sugar was enough. You could see my face, salt and sugar. It was enough. That salt and that sugar becomes a high. Okay. Gained the weight back, went back on Weight Watchers, lost it again. So you can see now I'm officially a yo-yo dieter. They said, "Why don't you go back to the program, etc." So, here we are. By the way, then at this point my doctor's like, "I don't know, maybe um maybe what we need to do." And she was, I want to say, my PCP, I love her. She was not a fan of the medical weight loss program. She thinks it destroyed people's metabolisms. And to be honest, I think that it did. I think it was a huge part of this. And by the way, I'm not a medical provider. I do not have research on this. This is my opinion, only myself. And I'm not attacking Merit or anybody. I'm saying this is just a fact, okay, of like something that I experienced. Not a fact. Um, it's my thought that it was connected to that. So now 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 we have a metabolism that's jacked up. We have still a really, really, really bad knee. My mobility is going down. We still have, I'm managing my ADHD and OCD and treating a lot of those things and doing really well. As a therapist, I'm actually doing extremely well and being very successful. I'm getting licensed and I'm, going to my dream job, which I work now at UW Health. I went into my dream job in academic healthcare. I did all these different things. I even as a fat person, I was, doing really well and successful, had relationships, had things that were happening, whatever. So those all occurred. Uh, so then this is almost the transition of what gets you from 400 to 600 pounds. And that's this next stage. The final part of this story of how I was before this. This wild thing happened, you guys. It's almost not real or unbelievable. How do I explain it? You can tell I'm just processing again. I really wanted to focus on not editing and just being authentic. How do you get from 400 something to 600 pounds after gaining all that weight back? And it almost seemed like every time I did a weight loss program, I gained more, 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 more. So it's almost like my metabolism was like screaming. So there's a couple things that happened. It turns, excuse me, it turns into, I'm getting water. Don't listen if you have misophonia. It turns into a medical mess after this. And I don't know if pointing fingers or saying failures or saying this or saying that. I'm just going to give my view. If you know any of these people or are these people and you know my name, this isn't about attacking you. Yet I want to share my experience so other people can learn from this situation. The first issue was going up and down, right? Multiple different programs. I do think that what happened next, so the start of it was now I'm pre-diabetic, okay? So I get my labs done. I'm pre-diabetic. So now what they do is at the time, a lot of these medications, GLP-1s, et cetera, metformin, you couldn't take those things unless you were pre-diabetic or had a predisposition, et cetera. It to be medically covered. That's the big issue. That's since obviously gotten better, but that was not the case, around this time. So I now have so my doctor puts me on metformin. I get complete gut rot. I'm allergic to a lot. So I need to be clear with you guys. I don't like saying it. I joke that I'm surprised I'm not allergic to the grass, which I probably am. Um, all these things start contagioning. All these things start happening. And they put me on metformin. I get really sick, so then I can't go back on it. And then they put me on another medication. I forgot what it was. It was kind of an alternative, didn't work. So then I had to go back and I wasn't approved because you had to be almost like, I think, diabetic to be on like Trulicity, to be in, I think it's called Trulicity and Ozempic, things like that. So I couldn't. If you hear the door open and shut, it's my doggy going out. So we're just gonna keep rolling. The So then I couldn't go on that. But then I had to, it was kind of the start with the insurance companies now of like, I'm pre-diabetic, I'm doing all these things, I'm doing everything people tell me, I'm doing this and that. But insurance wasn't covering when I tell you 600, 800, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, the cost of the medication just because I was really, really sick. And when I tell you sick, like metformin and some of those other meds made me so sick that I couldn't function. By the way, I'm a therapist sitting with people. I can't go go to the bathroom every 5 seconds. It couldn't happen. It was actually non-functional. When I tell you non-functional, every 5 to 15 minutes, over and over and over and over and over again. So it was almost non-functional. And that starts my fight with insurance companies about coverage and what I'm allergic to and things that happen. And now keep in mind, my mobility is getting worse now. My mobility is getting worse. I'm trying to lose weight. I'm doing everything that I can. I'm talking to my doctor. I'm trying to get on meds to manage my pre-diabetes. I'm going all these things. Well, what do you think happens? I get diabetic because a lot of this stuff is not managed. It doesn't do it. Even though I'm making some changes, I'm going up and down. I'm going up and down with food. Being inconsistent and still making choices that are not healthy for me. And when I say it's not about healthy or not healthy, it's about health. It's not about fat or not fat. It's about health, your heart health. It was not good for my heart health. And it's not good for your heart health, guys. It's not about that you can't enjoy it. It's not supposed to be a prison sentence, but food, for goodness sakes. Some of those things are meant to be enjoyed, but not obsessed over. And that is just the truth. Okay. With or without medical conditions or sensory issues, with or without all the other things that are going on. So now we get there. So on top of this, the pre-diabetes is happening around the same time. My bleeding issues, hormonal issues get so bad. When I say so bad, I almost went to the ER because I was losing so much blood. This is my warning. I warned you in the beginning. It's got medical issues. So much bleeding. They had put me on this. They had put me on that. They said, you're still on progesterone only. They put me on estrogen. They took me on this. They took me off the meds. They put me back on the meds. They didn't know what was going on. I was still bleeding. Turns out that I have PCOS. Okay. They knew I had PCOS. It wasn't in my documentation. That's why they put me back when I was 18 and had an ultrasound. They put me on estrogen or progesterone only because they tried all the other meds and it wasn't working. I had PCOS back then. I had never, ever had anybody talk to me medically, talk to me about medications, talk to me about supplements. Nobody ever talked to me about PCOS. By the way, strongly was connected. PCOS, ADHD, all these different things, arthritis, autoimmunities. Forgot to tell you that. Now I'm going through all these freaking things. I was diagnosed with a hypothyroidism. God, that's a huge one. It's because I've been on the med for so long, levothyroxine. I don't think about it, but I was diagnosed with that at 18. So PCOS and levothyroxine, hypothyroidism and PCOS. Hello, Fat 101. It's literally connected to them. It's weight gain. It's hormones. It's estrogen. It's literally, that's not even just a predisposition to being fat from both sides of my family. Genetic. Sorry to break it to you guys. It's genetic too. Genetic, hypothyroidism, PCOS. Now I'm fast forwarding. I have a knee issue. I have mobility issues, ambulatory issues. I have arthritis that's getting worse as we go along. And now, for fuck's sake, I have diabetes because I'm sitting here fucking yo-yoing trying to figure it out. Sounds like, and this literally just tumbles. Now, what we're not talking about is how much this fucking destroyed me. Like I tell you, it did not, when I say it didn't, I was done for. I was this and that. No, but it destroyed me, you guys. I went from a scholar athlete to an arthritic overnight. I went to a healthy scholar athlete to an arthritic overnight. That's what it felt like, to a fat arthritic. That was polypharmacy and polymedical and going to more doctors than I could fucking count. Where was all this stuff coming from? It almost really felt, even though, of course, we know there's a slow progression, we look back at that now, yet there is still a component where it felt like it happened overnight. That's what it feels like for a lot of people. So when someone says, "How the fuck did you get to 600 pounds? How did that happen?" You could tell my emotions coming out because my Italian F word's coming out. By the way, I put this in the beginning in the comments. I say the F word. So if you have children, please. Um, and I did. And it was just one thing after another after another. And after and after and after. So around this time, they finally send me, okay? They finally send me to a weight loss program, aka for like gastric sleeve, gastric bypass, etc. And at that time, I wasn't ready. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I think I was in 300s. I was, whatever in this spot. And I said, no, like I really want to try one last time. I want to try doing this one last time. Stupid. I will just tell you, stupid. Going back in time, should have done it sooner. And yes, I've had gastric sleeve, which we're going to go into. Yet that was something that was not good. Okay. So now they send me there. That's the first time. So I'm having all these medical issues. They're like, why are you on a progesterone only pill? Why are you doing this? What's happening? You should have went this. This destroyed your metabolism. This did this. You haven't been treated for your PCOS. I'm asking, do you have any medical advice? By the way, I didn't even mention this too. This is so complex. I went to a nutritionist who was great. I don't want to drop her name because it's like maybe a privacy thing, but I want to let you know she's great. She was healthy about like the way I was going to her when I was doing like the weight loss programs and stuff. And you're supposed to work alongside. I was always alongside a doctor, always alongside a nutritionist, had a PCP, had access to healthcare. I was talking to everybody about everything. And it's almost like people were watching me yo-yo and not stepping in and saying, let's get this done and do this. It's not like they were giving me recommendations, you guys. And I was like not doing it. I was doing everything everybody said. It's that it was getting yanked in every single direction. And I just wanted to get my knees done. I know it sounds weird, obviously, about my heart health and everything else, but I was just focused if I get my knees done and I could play sports again and I could do all these things, everything will be okay. Doesn't matter if it's realistic or not. I was in my 20s. Give me a break. It was my frontal lobe. So now we're in this point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to like try this one last time. I'm in this weight loss program, top one in Wisconsin, if not the Midwest. Went to them and said, no, I want to wait. I want to try this one last time. Well, some around that time, I lost my brother. Trigger warning. I lost my brother to suicide in June 2018. And I was still, around 400 pounds. I was balancing around those times. Yet I do think that grief impacted this ultimately. There's all these other things, you guys, yet we do need to understand the impact of other things. Okay. I do think grief impacted this. If you've ever watched the movie The Whale, it's not the exact same story, but you need to watch it if you haven't, especially if you're a 600-pound person or know somebody that is. Watch the movie and stop avoiding it. If you're a person that works in weight management, I've told all my providers to watch it. None of them have. I've told you, watch it. It's the most validating movie. And, Brendan Fraser, I wish I could tell you how amazing he did in that. It encompassed what being a fat person is, a very fat person that's very close to death, right? That is what it felt and was like. But we're not going to go into that now because that's another time. But I would just want to say this is the preemptive stuff. Everybody's fighting each other. I'm trying to get them to communicate. I'm asking questions. I'm getting insurance company. By the way, this is all while working 3 jobs because I'm trying to pay off my loans because I can't afford to live in Madison and I still can't. I'm still working 3 jobs. So I sit there, I'm trying to work, I'm trying to do these things, I'm trying to have relationships, I'm trying to be healthy, I'm trying to go on all these things, I'm trying to lose weight. This is while living that I'm in between. I'm making phone calls upon phone calls upon phone calls to different people, to insurance companies, to doctors, trying to get somebody to cover or do something. So you're like, well, what did you do? Well, in March of 2000, I think it was March 2018, that's when I went and I said, yeah, I'm going to try one more time. And then my brother died. And very openly, anybody that's been through is a survivor of suicide, it fucks you up. Okay. It completely fucks you up. You go into a fog. Nobody could prepare me for it. Grief could be its whole chapter. Okay. It could be its whole chapter, but I'm not going to go into that today. That's for another time. But just know the grief fucked me up. It definitely put me in my own. I'm forever thankful for my partner because he very much was my counterpart. We stayed on top of it. We kept things going. He helped me out with the grief process. My parents did. We had great supports, but it doesn't matter, you guys, because sometimes when you lose somebody, that's not enough. And those things happen. So when I just say I cared less about my health, It wasn't necessarily when people say like, "Oh, you just sat there and ate your emotions till 600." It really isn't that easy. If honestly, you guys, I don't even wanna say that because I don't wanna be dismissive of people with binge eating disorder because that's not what I'm trying to say. Just know that it fucked me up, and to be honest, it still does. It's not the same. It's a scar, not a wound, but it's not the same. So now we're going through all of that. And I should say, before the loss of my brother in 2017, at the end of the year, I remember I was going to go do a talk at my alma mater at Northern Michigan. It was in 2017 October, and I started having massive mobility issues. When I say like not just arthritis or knee pain, I like couldn't walk. Um Couldn't walk to the point where, like, even it walked like pins and needles, like, my legs my partner was helping, he was helping with ambulatory, he's a kind person that way, but it wasn't enough. I started having, like, these weird mobility issues where I, like, couldn't walk, or it was very difficult. Could not walk long distances, and then the grief happened. And then lost my grandpa almost, I think, around a year or less than a year later, and then the pandemic hit, you guys. So this is all the stuff. Honestly, those 2 years, again, are a little bit of a fog, but I wasn't, like, done trying. I was still going to doctors, figuring out my PCOS, figuring out my ADHD, my OCD, everything else. I was trying to medicate and figure it out, and everyone just went to medications and therapy, and I'm a therapist and I'm here for it, yet I would go to therapists, like I said, trying to find an eating disorder diagnosis. They're like, "You're not. We know it's sensory related. It's not, it's not, it's not." Even the weight loss specialists, the psychologists were like, "No, we don't think you have an eating disorder." And that was confusing because a lot of people would think that I had a binge eating disorder to be 600 pounds. And that was confusing. That was internalized ableism. That was a really hard thing to deal with. And now you fast forward, the pandemic happens, and just like everybody else, it was a trauma. I now wasn't getting out. I wasn't moving at all. Excuse me. My arthritis was at its worst. I barely could move. I don't know what was happening to my body. Nobody could explain it. They ran labs, they did everything they could. They even sent me to I begged to go to a specialist because I wanted my knee surgery done so bad, but now I was really gaining weight. I was in those 4 to 500 areas now. So nobody was doing anything because they're like, "We can't give you knee surgery. That can't happen." I said, "Is there something like, can I get a shot in my knee just so I could move?" I couldn't move and I didn't know what was happening. And nobody could answer me. Everybody was tossing me to the next. It's your hypothyroidism, it's your PCOS, it's your mental health, it's your this, it's your that. Everything was fucking me. Everything was me or something I wasn't doing, and it even took my partner looking at my doctors and being like, "She doesn't eat, you guys." Like, I was eating, but normal amounts. Like, he was like, "I eat more than her and I gained 5 pounds." Like, she's eating and she's gaining 20 a month. Like, something's not right. And I'm not even lying about it. There's no point in lying to anybody now. I don't know what the fuck was going on. I had no idea. I literally had no idea. And part of me thought it was like the birth control, but I literally couldn't go off of it. They put me on everything they could think of. By the way, I tried IUDs twice. So if anybody gives me, I exhausted all the resources, everything. Had major medical issues. They fell out twice, so I couldn't get it again. I'm literally right now on a medication that's so far down the line, I've exhausted every resource except the depot, which I can't take because of my weight. So basically, I've literally for my PCOS that and nobody ever talked to me about, and that's I'm sure there are doctors that can explain it to you, but I've said, "Can I just get a hysterectomy? Pull it out. Pull it out at this point. It's one less thing." And they're like, "You talk about your hormones are bad now. We don't want to do that because of this, this, and that." By the way, doing IUDs without pain medications or putting people under is fucking nuts and has to be unethical in the future because they did that twice. It was painful, traumatic, terrible. I don't even wanna go into the IUD stuff. You can see my brain, I don't even wanna go into it. It's this whole other thing, but now there's all of this, and they're just like, "Throw her on birth control, and hysterectomy is not an option." Okay. Levothyroxine, I have hypothyroidism, but my levels are pretty good. It's actually time for me to check them. But that was good. My vitamin D was managed. I was taking, like, vitamins. I was doing what I needed to do, but I was still gaining weight. Okay? Um, and I couldn't move. And grief and choice. Definitely not lack of support in the essence of, I think the medical system really failed me. I think they needed to communicate more. I think back when I was 18, they needed to communicate more, and I think every time that I transfer care, well, I transferred in Madison twice, like, once to a company and then to another company. But I sat here and say to myself, like, "One of you should have talked to each other. Like, you should have stopped. You should have talked to each other." I even still beg some of them to talk to each other, and it's just so disconnected, you guys, and when someone's that complex, you just can't. You can't watch somebody slowly gaining 600 pounds and none of you fucking talk. Like, none of you have a systems meeting to talk about. There's a person in their 20s that's 600 fucking pounds. Well, it was probably 30 at that point, 30, 31. I'm 37 now. How? How am I asking for help organizing myself and everything else, and that happens? So then that's the perfect storm, and I'm 600 pounds. I reflect back on it. It's really hard not to get upset with yourself, but that's just another version of the problem, is that everybody blames me, including me, that happened. I truly believe that choice was 20% of that. I don't care how you feel about it. I don't care how fat phobic feel about it. Even if in the future, let's say I don't think it will, but if it goes viral and someone sees this and there's a whole bunch of health people on YouTube that review this and have something to fucking say about that percentage, you don't know. Unless you've been 600 pounds, respectfully, you don't know. You don't. You have no idea how many doctors I went to. You have no idea how many fucking nutritionists I went to. I told you about my history as a child, so stick that in a box if you'd like to. Well, it's perfectionism. Well, it's this. Well, it's that. You can sit here and point to whatever biased fucking view you have. The reality is it's called the perfect storm, and I never should have been 600 pounds. Because the problem was everybody put it on me. Everybody did that. It was something I was fucking doing or not doing, just like probably some of you are now. And honestly, it's not even about fairness. It's just not fucking right. Because fat people have rights too, you guys. Plus size people have rights. People with medical conditions have rights. They have the right to be informed about their treatment, for people to communicate. They have the right to ask questions. And I can't tell you how many times I ask questions and I either got, "I don't fucking know." I don't know. Ask somebody else. Ask this person. I'm pointing fingers. Nobody took ownership because I was just one fucking massive liability, all the point to where I was 600 pounds. So I don't care what any of you have to say. 80% of this was medical gaslighting. 80% of this was fat phobic medical system. 80% of this, by the way, even with good, caring people, there was nowhere to put me. I didn't fit. I'll take the 20% choice, but you can go fuck yourself if you try to give me more, because I was in it every day. I had people that I loved advocating. I had people that were specialized in this field that literally had no idea what was going on. I had consultants, nutritionists, doctors, specialists in the top parts of the industry, not knowing what was going on with me. And honestly, because I was one big massive liability, nobody did anything. And you're gonna sit there and be like, "Nobody did anything. They gave you all these referrals." Running somebody in circles and saying that it's about them and more that they need to do in between all their other stuff is not it. Sometimes you need someone to stop and communicate. Sometimes you need all the people that had your past care to stop and communicate, not just with me, but with each other. And I wasn't dumb. It's not that I wasn't doing what was asked of me. It's that I was running in circles and doing what everybody asked of me, and everybody was still blaming me. And it wasn't enough. That's not even including the culture. This isn't even, by the way, excuse me. This isn't even, by the way, going into what society was saying about me. Like the first time I went to actually walk for the first time in the pandemic in 2020, the first time, that was almost 600 pounds, and somebody yelled whale to me, a person I didn't know. I went to a park with my friend when I was 400 pounds, and some kid's kid, literally a teenage kid, was like, can't believe she's wearing that. What is wrong with people? The people's people. What does my body have anything to do with you? You're screwing up insurance. You're doing this. You're an embarrassment. You're lazy. You're this. You literally don't know me. You have not seen me through my seasons. You don't know what I've been through. The 15 years that I had to get here, and a lot of you that are saying that I'm 350 pounds, that I'm still too fat, that none of you know that that I was at 600 and I am where I am now, which is the next part of this story. I think I'm realizing today I'm going to break this into 2 more parts. This is part 1. This is part 1 of getting to 600 pounds. No edits, no nothing, just me. No notes. I clicked up a couple things like this or this. Nothing else. This is me. Complex medical conditions, medical gaslighting, lack of communication, internalized fat phobia, and very openly fat phobia, and choices. I sat in that fucking car over and over and over again and ate. Is that what you guys want to hear? Because it's true. That is a part of it. Sensory, hormones, diabetes, insulin resistance, which I'm going to go into what happens when I am 600, that finally a specialist that knew her stuff stepped up. Now I'm 600 pounds. I'm in the corner of my house and I'm waiting to die. Please make sure to follow me. I'm going to be doing a part 2 of 600-pound therapist. This was very raw at the end. I appreciate you listening and for being here with us. And if in any capacity, if you are somebody struggling with your health, your weight, your body, what all these people say about you does not define you. You do. Let me share the 600 pounds, and then we're going to talk more about that part, about what we do with it now and what recovery looks like and things like that. But for today, part 1 is enough. Please make sure to check out AnneCTotero. I do have a website, AnneCTotero.com. I do have on all social media platforms. I have a book coming out, Things to Consider by AnneCTotero, on 9/22/2025. I would really appreciate it if you go to my website, even if you just put it in your email. I have 5 emails that are going out with notifications and giveaways. I'd really appreciate it, because I thought that even 2 years before that, 2, 3 years, I'd be dead. And the fact that now I'm 350 pounds and not 600, that I wrote a book, that I'm at the most successful point in my career, all these different things. I would really like if you came along for the ride. So thanks for being here for part 1. Part 2 will be next, about truly the 600-pound life. And as always, evolve and heal on, my friends. We'll see you soon.